So John, first of all, thank you very much for taking some time to talk to us. We're talking to you not just as the CEO, but as basically the person who's been at CTEC for the longest amount of time. How would you sum up what CTEC means to you?
Well, it's been in my life probably longer than anything else, so it means an awful lot to me. I was the 7th person ever to be employed by the business, so I've seen a lot of people come and a lot of people go, and the business change completely over those years and change a number of times as well, so it's part of me. I think we had a group executive board a while back when we were going through our reorganisation last year, and I said then to colleagues that if CTEC died, a piece of me would die too. And I think that's probably the best way really to talk about my feelings for the organisation.
I want to take you back to those first days in a little while, but before we do, if you were to explain what CTEC did to someone you just met for the first time, so you're down at the local pub and somebody says, what do you do? I'm the CEO of CTEC. What is CTEC?
That's an interesting question, because that's one I posed to a number of the senior team, which is what I actually call rather than the pub test, the barbecue test. I guess the easiest way of describing CTEC is that we improve people's lives. That's what I have said for a number of years. Some people say change, but change isn't always good, is it? It depends where you are on that change cycle.
We're talking impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've always felt that anybody that we see, that we interact with, that we should make a difference, and a positive difference to them. So, make every interaction matter, make it count for that individual. And I think that the work that we do really does improve people's lives and change them for the better. And
it's a bit like throwing a pebble into a pond, because it's not just that individual, it's the community around them as well.
Yeah, and our impact on that individual's family and the communities that they live in is not immeasurable, but it's significant, especially if we're talking about somebody desisting from a life of crime as an example, or getting a job and they haven't had a job for 6, 7, 10 years. These are life-changing events, making people feel better about themselves or differently about themselves. And I think that's something that we've always done. Even when we opened, we were taking kids predominantly from disadvantaged or difficult backgrounds, and without our intervention, who knows what would have happened to them.
Some of them may be a long way away from their end goal.
That's right, absolutely. So some of the programmes, we don't get to keep them for the whole journey, but if we can help them along that journey, then that's a positive impact. I mean, for instance, somebody that's got agoraphobia, as example, getting them to walk to the end of their path and talk to us at their front gate is a major step forward for them. So although a lot of our commissioners talk about the ultimate, in other words, the outcome, we're also responsible for an awful lot of change, those softer changes that are still really significant for those individuals.
It's interesting you say that. How do you, as the CEO of such a big company now, sitting in an office in Hockley, how do you keep in touch with those people that are delivering those services on the ground?
Well, I try to get out as much as I can, and lately that's really not been enough. I do like to go and see what our colleagues are doing on the front line. I think it's really important. I've been really fortunate in my career that I've done most of the roles within the business, obviously not some of the more specialist roles. So I do understand sort of what it's like on a day-to-day basis.
Do you think that's important for people to?
I do, but then I'm an individual that sort of learns by doing, so I'm a practical type of learner, and also I do genuinely believe in that lived experience as well. So we all get knocks in our lives. I've had some pretty big ones as well, and actually reflecting on your life and being able to use scenarios that you've been in, I think is a real help to doing the role. And Irish colleagues, we've got a lot of colleagues there that have been unemployed themselves or been in really difficult situations. So when their clients come in, they can really empathise with it. And as we talked about one of the values of walking in somebody else's shoes, I do think that's important.
You walked through the doors here when you were 17 years old?
So I was 16 actually.
16?
I was only 60, yeah. So I'm an August baby, so I would just turn 16 when I walked through here.
So in that time, and we're just celebrating 40 years of CTEC,
Yeah.
in that time you've seen an awful lot of changes, as you
Yeah.
mentioned at the start. Change comes really difficult to some people, doesn't it?
Yes.
And I think if you spoke to, I don't know, 99% of the colleagues at CTEC, they'd say they do this because we are able to make a change for other people. How do you then replicate that ethos within the company? Because it is disturbing when you know that things are changing all the time. We all understand that we've got to move forward, that we've got to progress. But how do you communicate that change and take people with you?
So I don't think it's just about communication. I think it's about demonstrating to colleagues that we're actually going to do. I mean, one of the things that I've heard a number of times, and it's not just CTEC this can be levied at, is that you heard it all before, or you say it and you don't do it. And I think one of the sort of areas for improvement is allowing colleagues to be able to move cross-department. I think there's a lot of siloed thinking at a number of levels where you look at somebody that's not in your line and you think that they won't have the skills. And a lot of the skills that colleagues have got are transferable. And so, you know, with a new HR director in the business, some of that focus is going to be about what sort of Penny Levac and I call it the wheel of opportunity, where you imagine that everybody on a level's on a part of a wheel, but then you can spin the wheel and move out from that. So giving people other opportunities in other areas where they don't feel that they're fixed in that part of the business, I think is really key. And that also goes with the One CTEC that I'm really keen that we promote and all get behind, is that, you know, we're all actually doing a very similar job. Of course there's specialisms, but, you know, when you look operationally, we're all out to achieve the same goal.
You've already said that you basically live and breathe this place. Who's the John Bornbeck that we don't know? What do you, other than barbecues, of course?
So majority of my time outside of the business will be with my family. I've got an 11-year-old son who takes up a lot of my time. He's cricket mad, so a lot of the time I spend with him, either with his coach or watching him play at the weekends. So that's really important, and really trying to balance that time. So, you know, I do try and get time away where I try not to think about the business, and that's really difficult actually, because you go to sleep thinking about it and you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, but that's important to me.
Would you like him to follow you into this sort of business? Or would you warn him off and say, don't go there, go play in cricket?
I wouldn't do either, and I'll tell you why. What's important for me, for my son, is that whatever he does he's happy in. You know, I'll be proud of him whatever he does, but I don't want him to feel that he's got a career because I expected it of him, or that there's I see so much pressure from parents now on children to, and you know, you're only here once. You get a very short amount of time on the planet, and actually looking back and saying, you know what, I did a job and I had a career and I was really happy with that and I'm really proud of what I achieved, is way more important than, you know, him being, you know, a banker and earning millions of pounds. I mean, I'd just much sooner that he had a fulfilling life that he enjoyed.
Let's be honest with each other. There are always days when you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I really can't face work today. What motivates you? What keeps you going?
Really, the individuals that I serve. You know, yes, I'm the CEO, but, you know, I'm here to make sure that the company's in the best health it can be. So it's making sure that I don't let others down, you know, and there's an expectation that I do my job and do it well to ensure everybody else's job's there. So, I mean, that's what motivates me. And also still making a difference. It's a long time since I've personally done that, and, I do miss it actually.
Would you like to do it?
Yeah, I
Would you
really enjoy it.
Would you rise to the challenge of perhaps going back to the front line for a little while?
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me at all. I mean, you've got a picture here with that's me as a trainer, and there's a guy there. He's one of my students at the time who I still know. He's a guy called Dan Owen. So he left us. He ran his own website development company. Did Thompson's website as an example, and Martin Rundle and David Coulthard, so sort of ex-Formula One drivers, he did that. And then he ran his own company selling flat pack furniture. He's done some consultancy for us in Plus Kick on our manufacturing arm. So he's really entrepreneurial guy, and we're still friends. And I'm proud to be part of his life journey. For me, is really great that. Even if he forgot about me, I would still know that I played a part, even a small part, in his life. So, and that for me, that's what being on the front line's about. You don't actually need the thanks, but to know that you've made that difference, I think, is really, really satisfying.
And you've brought up the photos that you've got in front of you. So let's take you back to that day as a.
And that's in this room, actually.
Is it this room here?
Yes, right. That's actually there.
Oh, wow. So let's take you back to that day as a young 16-year-old.
Yeah.
What were you feeling when you turned up at the front door here?
I was apprehensive because I was, I'm an introvert by nature, and at that point I was a very shy individual. I've learned to be much more socially confident than you do over the years, and funnily enough, teaching from when you're 18 makes you makes you a little bit more socially aware. So I was really quite nervous on that first day. But I guess as I've got older, I've always felt that being anxious and being nervous and those sort of things are a strength. I've always felt that overconfidence is when you make your mistakes. So I look back now and it's. It's like a different version of me, I guess, really, when you look back like that. So much has changed.
You also mentioned our social enterprise, Plus, CIC. It would be remiss of me not to bring up Plus, really, because it's a very different side of our organisation that perhaps some people don't actually know what it is we do.
Yeah.
But it's a very rewarding side as well.
Yeah, so they get to look after the really genuine, hardest to help individuals. And when I say genuine, I'm not being disingenuous, but people with multiple and complex barriers, people that wouldn't ever leave their house if it wasn't for the work that we do. And I think it's sort of testament to the colleagues that we've got down there that they're providing that service years and years, and that is a genuine change to somebody's life. But not only that, it is a genuine change to the family, the carers of those individuals. And it's great. The last time I was down there talking to some of the colleagues that are actually on the scheme, because obviously they're colleagues, they work for us, how that programme, whether it's paper recycling or material recycling, has given them the ability then to get another job, like a part-time job in a supermarket or something else, which is incredible, because without that it wouldn't have happened. And I'm also thankful really to the local authorities that actually put that money in as well to help us provide those services. And it would be wrong of me not to mention the fact that we make park benches and we make picnic tables and
very good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And colleagues should be looking there to buy their next garden
for their
furniture.
barbecue.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
We've had our ups and downs. The company has gone like this a little
Yep.
bit. We're now in a position where we're looking forward. We've got to grow.
Yep.
How do you propose that?
So in a number of areas, I mean, the 5-year business plan that we launched is really focusing on training, so our skills business, and increasing that, and increasing apprenticeships, and increasing training in other areas for businesses, but also for government departments as well. I think that's key. And commercialising some of those group functions as well. CTEC's history was that we really didn't have a large corporate function. It was a commercial function. A lot of those activities I ran, and I think the benefits, personally, I think the benefits are twofold. I think the key benefit for CTEC is that when you're working in an environment where you're looking after more than one customer, you have to think out the box and you have to look at different solutions and you have to look at different ways of working. And looking outside constantly brings that experience and that expertise into the business, and you start working in a different way. So having sort of more than one master helps. But not only that, those areas that we're looking to increase the size of are cash generative. We've got debts to pay, and building a commercial business means that we'll get recurring revenue, monthly or yearly revenue from customers that will increase our cash position and help us pay our debts off quicker.
Do we risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Because you've mentioned, we've spent most of this chat talking about the people that we make an impact on their lives and the communities that we impact. Are we taking our eye off the ball a bit by going in this other direction?
No, because, I mean, for me, it's quite clear that, you know, for instance, if you're working in employment right now, you shouldn't really see any sort of change. What you're doing is still what you're doing. And if I look back in the history of the organisation, it didn't impact us there either. It was actually positive. You know, I can think back of a time where we were significant market leaders in information technology, in employment and training, miles ahead, developed all of our own software to run the business on those areas, and that's where we need to get back to. I don't think so, because, you know, helping businesses grow might mean that there's less people unemployed. It might mean that there's less workless. You know, as we sit here, 9.4 million people of a working age are not working. Now, you know, we need to grow the economy of the country as well and leave a legacy for our children. So I don't think that those two directives are mutually exclusive. And I think that helping others grow, and it may be that we're helping competitors on the Nexvia side of the business. You know, if there's a, you know, I use a relatively simple example of sort of a small labour market programme in Carlisle. CTEC probably wouldn't want to bid for that. But why couldn't we help a small charity there, set its IT up, make sure it's got the information security, help with the programme design and help them do that? Because ultimately, if they help people, then the work that we've done in the back office will be helping them achieve that goal and helping somebody. So it's sort of similar to what I was saying about somebody's journey. You know, for me, okay, so we didn't directly help them, but we indirectly helped them by helping that charity achieve its aims. So I think that, you know, that work is as good. It's just different.
We've just gone through a rebranding process. As you can see, the new bright colours, you know, the inclusion, everything is sort of illustrated in our new branding. The website is having a refresh as well. Is CTEC having a midlife crisis, or are we looking towards the future?
No, I don't think it is at all. I mean, it's easy to look back and be critical, and we should be, and we should learn from it. But if I go back to 2019 or January 2020, we became employee owned, the business is a completely different one. You know, and if you just note down, you know, what that business was then and now, you know, we were in 2020, January 2020, we were the joint largest provider of probation services in the UK. We ran a third of probation for the Ministry of Justice. Our employability side was relatively small. We were the leading provider of apprenticeships and training in the aviation space, and we were at that point in time talking to Ryanair, EasyJet and American Airlines about taking on you know, their cabin crew as well, and we were looking to move into engineering in aviation. And then sort of a few weeks into that, we had an unprecedented pandemic that completely changed the face of the business. And the outcome of that is the CTEC we see today. We have no probation because it was renationalised. Our contracts are now margin capped. So, you know, we agree that anything over a set amount we have to pay back. And they're open book accounting, which means that every individual that's working on them needs to be accounted for and reported to the Commissioner. British Airways, during the pandemic, made 10,000 people redundant out of 12,000 staff. So our apprenticeship business was completely decimated, and we've had to reinvent that. And there's been some problems and mistakes on the way, I guess. And I'm confident now we've got the right leadership team and the right people to grow that. So the CTEC we're looking at now looks nothing like the one from even 5 years ago. I think we've got some really strong footings here. Look, we're consistently in the top 3 or 4 of DWP provision. We're either 1 or 2 in terms of job entries. We're not number 1 or 2 in outcomes simply because of the number of part-time and pay-related jobs that we get because of the geographical region. We're the leading provider in Ireland with great reputation there. We're the best NCS provider, as an example.
National Career Service.
National Career Service, sorry, yeah. So there's a lot of really positive things to think about, in the areas that we're working in. And, by the way, I use those as examples. I could go on, but where we are, we do and provide an excellent service. So we've got a lot to be proud about. And I think that will put us in good stead with commissioners. We're in a period of real uncertainty. We've got a new government. We don't know exactly what they're going to do. And to be frank, they don't know exactly what they're going to do yet. But what we should be about is providing the best service and being known for providing the best service in the areas that we work in. Because that's one of the things I think that should be able to set us apart. We're employee owners. We should think about the fact that this is partly our business and then should reflect on us, shouldn't it? So for me, I want us to provide the best quality and the best service, because you can hang your hat on that. You can say to a commissioner, look, we're number 1 or number 2. There's hardly anybody better than us at it. And if we're not doing that, then we're just like everybody else.
John, I don't want to hold you back from... I know that there's several dozen 40th anniversary cupcakes waiting to be distributed around the building, and I know that there are people who are looking like Labradors with their little jewellery at the... So we're going to perhaps share some of these around in a moment, but what is the significance of celebrating 40 years of CTEC? Why is it important?
It's massively important. I think what a massive milestone, significant achievement for the business. I think being sort of the 7th person through in 85, I was employed. I started in September 84, but if I was told then that this would be sort of £100 million business with the number of employees that we have in the areas that I wouldn't have believed it. So I think it's a fantastic milestone, and it's great that we've got so many colleagues that have been here for a good number of years as well. So it's a truly incredible milestone that we've made.
Are you going to have a cake before we...
I'm not going to have a cake right now. No, I'll let others have
Are you
them
sure?
first. Yes, I am indeed.
Well, I am. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure talking to you.